2 of Safer Gambling Week. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for being with us online and joining us live from Aspire Global. It's been an incredible week already, and we're only on day 2, but we have a fantastic week ahead of us. And of course, Safer Gambling Week is not just here in Malta, it's right across Europe. And we're thrilled to be teaming up with the EGBA over in Brussels, but also Safer Gambling Week in the UK. So here we are at Aspire. We've got some great content for you this morning, but I want to take a moment just to kind of bring together some of the thoughts that I have experienced as we've prepared for Safer Gambling Week and some of the things that we're going to be talking about this morning. I'm Trudy Kerr, I'm from iGen, and we work with a number of iGaming companies across Malta, and Aspire being one of those, and here we are live. But let me tell you, so what I've learned from preparing for Safer Gambling Week is that iGaming companies really care about safer gambling. Safer gambling because not only is it good for players, for their well-being, for their mental health, but also I've learned that safer gambling is a good business model. And whatever you think, whatever your preconceptions might be, safer gambling is what good iGaming companies want. So how are they doing that? Well, let me tell you, and we'll be finding out this morning from Dr. Reece Bush-Evans, is that a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of investment goes into making sure that players are protected. And of course, with iGaming companies and with Aspire and every other company that is a responsible iGaming company, using that digital footprint that all players leave behind means that they can look at the data, look at the analysis, and make sure that they protect players. And if there are any players, the third thing that I've learned, that fall through the net, there's so much support for them to be able to deal with those issues. We're really excited for Safer Gambling Week. We're really excited to be here on day 2, live from Aspire, and to be joined not just by Elizabeth and the team here, but also by Dr. Reece Bush-Evans, who'll be talking about his research at Bournemouth University.
Thank you so much, Trudy. And AspireGlobal is an official supporter of the Safer Gambling Week, and we're keen to raise the awareness extra even this week about all the topics to lead to a more safer user experience for our players. So let's get talking, and this is why we are hosting this interactive talk, focusing on research in safer gambling, how we can apply it better, how can we learn, and how can we collaborate. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you all Dr. Reece Bush of the Bournemouth University.
Hi everybody, thank you very much for having me in this very exciting and important week within safer gambling. As you've just heard, my name is Reece Bush-Evans and I'm from Bournemouth University, and I'm going to talk about our research that we're currently doing, as well as research that we have coming up, which you can help to also take part in. So I'll just load my slides. So I'll give you a brief outline about my background, the team that I'm part of at Bournemouth University, the research that we are currently undertaking at Bournemouth University and ways in which you can get involved, and then I'll have some time afterwards for some questions, should you have any. Thank you. So a little bit about me. I have a PhD in social and personality psychology. So what really interests me are how individuals interact with others, how individuals interact with technology, what sort of personality aspects can we look at within behaviour, as well as behaviour change. I'm also interested in decision making, particularly within gambling, as well as making behaviour changes. This sort of falls within the realm of cyber psychology. So cyber psychology is the psychology of our interaction with technology, and in relation to this is our research team that I'm part of. So I'm part of the Gambling Research Group at Bournemouth University, which is part of the Engineering and Social Informatics Group, or ESOTICS, within the university itself. And we have a higher order thinking process in that we want to try to explore the best way in which we can support users and improve the user experience through human-computer interaction research, particularly within the gambling stream. So I've got here a list of some of my colleagues, some of my great colleagues here that you may already have heard of before. And our aims as a research department, we understand the importance that decision-making, particularly informed decision-making, has within safer gambling. So we understand that in order to be safe and to promote healthy behaviours within the gambling industry, we need to work on improving informed decision-making as well as keeping players in control of their gambling. So we understand that there are elements to this which involve transparency, and our research that I'm going to talk about today covers some of these areas. We want to understand as a research group the process that gambling behaviour has on the user and try to find ways in which we can support the user to promote healthy behaviours. We do know that the majority of people who do gamble do so in a responsible and sustainable way, and that is great. But we are also aware that there are some people who are at risk. So it's very important for us as researchers, but also as an industry, to work together to identify individuals who are at risk and try to find ways to prevent problematic gambling. I'm going to be talking about how we're using data, which is our core element to our research, as well as technology to support the user, but also the gambling industry. And using the data that we can obtain from the gambling industry with the consent of participants or consent of players, we're able to shape interventions. And this is very important. There are some interventions out there for individuals with gambling-related harm, but there's not enough. We can still do a lot more. So, Homer Simpson. So why is research actually important for the user? Well, ultimately, by conducting research, we're able to understand a lot about the user. So looking at ways in which the user interacts with the technology. Do they perceive technology or the gameplay or the promotional material within gambling in certain ways? Are there cognitive biases at play? Do individuals have particular ways to perceive data and particular ways in perceiving information? And by understanding this, the core, the user, the human, we're able to understand how to better improve the user experiences. So working through understanding the psychology of the user, we're able to help support them and get the best out of them. And in doing so, we're able to use research and data and collaboration with industry to help find ways in which we can support informed decision-making, improve the user satisfaction and user experience, but also to encourage and empower safer gambling. And that's ultimately what we all want, right? We want to encourage and facilitate safer gambling. So, just as a little overview, in regards to technology, we're all aware, or no doubt we've all experienced different technological changes in our life. I can remember having a brick phone, and now it is a smartphone. Technology is getting smarter, and artificial intelligence offers exciting new breakthroughs every single day. We're able to understand a lot more about data, how it's collected, how we can share it, and how we can use that. And within technology, at the moment, there's many exciting overlaps which we can see in between looking at gaming and gambling. So if there's any Grand Theft Auto fans out there, for instance, in one of their recent game packages, you could go inside a virtual casino. So these are opportunities not only to look at how gambling overlaps with other areas, but also to find ways in which we can intervene, find ways in which technology can help us to support the user and to support safer gambling. So let's talk about a particular example of technological development. How many people actually know how much they use their phones? Without checking, of course. I, for one, don't have a great grasp about how long I spend looking at my screen or being on my computer or looking through apps. However, with technological developments and updates, we're now offered screen time reports We're offered the ability to understand how our data is being able to be collected, but also to be able to inform us. So we actually find that most people don't really realise how long they spend looking at their phones. And some recent statistics suggest that in the UK, the average user spends 3.5 hours looking at their screen, which for me is quite a lot. But in the USA, that number is a lot higher, at 5.5 hours. And having this ability to have feedback from the data that's collected about you can offer you opportunities to stay in control, to have time management awareness. We're offered the opportunity to set limits on our phones, to set notifications when we are spending too much time. And ultimately, this empowers the user. So why can't we extend this further into the realm of gambling? Let's look at how technological developments can be used within the gambling realm, because small changes can actually have a big impact upon supporting the user. So technological developments are fantastic. As I said, they're forever increasing, and they have the ability to support behaviour change. But behaviour change isn't that simple. It involves a lot of research. It involves a lot of data. There are different barriers that we need to overcome in regards to behaviour change. So looking at demographics, do certain demographics have different ways in which they can respond to the data that's presented or the feedback? For instance, there are many mobile phone companies which often tell you how much time you spent looking at spent on your actual phone as well. For some individuals, this feedback may actually backfire. And that's ultimately because a lot of feedback sometimes isn't personalised. It goes out to the mass audience in regards to the data that's collected. So if we can find ways in which we can personalise feedback, we're able to find effective ways at behaviour change. We do not want to find ways in which annoys the user. We want to improve their satisfaction and improve their experience. So research is needed to explore what type of feedback we can use within the gambling industry, and using this particular feedback and the data collected from a user to support them. So our research at Bournemouth University is looking at combining technology and behaviour change research to provide evidence-based strategies to prevent harmful gambling. And for us, that is our key and core ethos. We want to prevent harmful gambling, and we want to do this by incorporating exciting technological developments as well as psychological research, so looking at behaviour change. Our research is funded by GambleAware and is branched into 2 different areas. So we have AspireGam 1, which relates to enabling responsible online gambling, part 1. And this is a project which underlies all the research I'm going to be talking about today. So I'll give you a brief overview of that research. And AspireGam 2, which is what we are currently looking at the moment. And it's our aim to use this data that we collect and to look at the research to find the best ways to support the user, but also to provide the best possible good practice guidelines that we can give to the industry so that they can use our research for the greater good, so that they can inform and help inform future interventions. As I've already alluded to before, for us, data is super important. And obtaining data is going to be very, very important for our research practices and our research aims. A lot of research within the gambling realm actually uses and relies upon self-report data from participants. So they may ask questions relating to how much money or how much time did you spend gambling previously? And we rely on the data and the trust and the honesty from participants. However, if we can extend that and actually obtain player data, we're able to get an objective measure of how they are responding with the technology, but also find ways in which we can personalise interventions, identify people who are at risk, provide important and personalised feedback to the user, and understand best ways in which we can support them, as well as building relationships between the industry, the user, and the platform. So here is an example of some of the research that we conducted within AspireGam 1. So we were able to introduce and to create software in which a user or a gambler would be able to access their player history on an app, and from this they were able to be sent different multimedia messages relating to their actual usage, interact with the researcher themselves, but also obtain visualized data in different formats about their data. So we offered individuals and players the opportunity to obtain their data, to understand what the data collected is, how it looks, so how much time they spent gambling, how much money they spent gambling, but also to incorporate that with the opportunity to offer feedback to and with the researchers. So for example here, we have 3 images of the app. So a user would log into the app and they would have their data which is collected iteratively and up-to-date data from their gambling operator. They would be able to find out interesting things about how much they've won versus how much they've lost, or the amount of money or transactions that they've spent daily or weekly. And from this information, we are empowering the user to use that however they wish to do so. So we would also offer messages to the particular users in relation to their gambling data. So this would be personalized messages that we would be able to send to the user in order to help them, in order to engage the user, and to also allow them to make informed decisions based upon their actual data themselves. So if you realised that yesterday you spent £10 but lost it, would you be willing to do the same again tomorrow? So seeing the data that's collected about you and then making informed decisions based upon that. We complemented this AspireGam 1 platform by including some interviews, some qualitative interviews with some participants who had previously experienced a gambling problem. And as you can see here, the comments speak for themselves. So having a visual look of what I spent makes it real, makes me understand. I didn't realise I spent X amount of money over the last 2 weeks. I can see by looking at the visual data that's provided that, you know, this would be a good thing, that I can acknowledge what I've spent, how I can use that data. And that providing this particular type of data would be useful, as it enables me to work out the best odds, work out the best types of money. So there are opportunities within obtaining feedback from interventions as well as research to develop ways in which we can improve the user's experience. And AspireGam 1 was the first part of the project, and it underlies the rest of the research that we're currently conducting. So AspireGam 2 is where we're up to now. And AspireGam 2, as I said, builds upon the foundation of AspireGam 1 in understanding the use of data and the ways in which we can tailor the data to make it personalized for the user so that we can provide informed decision-making opportunities. So we have 2 work packages that we're currently undertaking, and there are opportunity for operators, stakeholders, as well as members of the public to take part in both of these packages. So a little plug there. So work package 1, can we use data from player accounts that we have done so in AspireGam 1 to deliver particular intervention messages? And these intervention messages are relating to social norms, as well as goal-setting opportunities, which I'll discuss in a moment. And work package 2, how can transparency within the industry be used effectively to promote responsible gambling? So are there ways in which we can improve the promotional materials or the game mechanics that the users actually experience? In doing so, are we able to increase the opportunity for safer gambling? So our first aim Our first aim for work package 1 is looking at whether or not the opportunity to visualize your data combined with a particular intervention, be it through goal setting or social norms feedback, can actually lead to reductions in problematic gambling. We know from Errorgam 1 that users like to see their data. Can we go a step further to try to find ways in which we can use that data with some psychological theory to create interventions? But also, we're interested in how the interventions are actually received. There's no point creating an intervention if it doesn't work. So we are expecting and hoping for feedback throughout the actual process of our research so that we can build better and more effective ways in which we can tackle problematic gambling. So, an element, as I said, of our intervention is social norms. And social norms are everywhere. They dictate all of what we do. They dictate our behaviour. These are unwritten rules of beliefs or attitudes that we consider acceptable. The issue, however, is that they're typically prone to being misjudged. So we know that people should say bless you when you sneeze, or somebody should say thank you if you were to hold a door open. But there are opportunities within social norms and thinking about other individuals' beliefs, behaviours and attitudes that tend to be misperceived. So as I've got here, we're influenced by what we think the norm is. And that's often to a much greater extent than what we actually realise. I may not think that I'm spending a lot of time looking at my screen because I'm assuming that I'm spending the same amount of time that others are also spending. But perhaps I'm actually spending more. And within the realm of social norms, within psychological theory, it's evident that we're generally quite bad at determining what other people think and what other people do. And this is typically because they're other people. So we have limited information about others. And this leads to misperceptions. So in the research, we identified that we tend to think others are worse than ourselves. So within social norms research, we can see that we believe other people drink more alcohol than we do, or that our neighbours recycle less than we do. There are different ways in which we can misperceive the attitudes and behaviours of others. Within the gambling domain then, we're looking at two particular social norms which is going to relate to the research that we're conducting. So we have descriptive norms. So this is the perception of what is. And these are these easily quantifiable behaviours. So the frequency of gambling or the amount of money that we spend gambling. Do we perceive others to spend the same amount of money that we do? Or do we perceive that others spend the same amount of time gambling that we do? We're also looking at injunctive norms, which are a little bit more complex, and this relates to the perception of what should be. So this looks at more the attitudes, the emotions, and the beliefs of others. So do we perceive other individuals to regret their gambling like we do? Do we perceive other individuals to have a higher approval of gambling? And from looking at these particular social norms, we're able to create interesting and exciting interventions. And we would do this by one, collecting the data of what the individuals expect or perceive the norms to be, and then presenting actual data, actual norm data of what the actual social norms are. And we would be looking at including both of these accounts to combat particular misperceptions. And I'm very excited to show that we have some preliminary findings. They've very, very recently come through. And what we've seen so far are that some gamblers do have misperceptions about the gambling of others. So they tend to think that others lose more money than they do. They tend to think that they should cut down on their gambling, but they don't feel that they should have to do that themselves. Some gamblers also overestimate how much that others feel regret after gambling. So they might perceive other individuals as more regretful for the particular gambling activity that they've done. but not themselves. And what we can start to sense from this data is that some gamblers appear to justify their behaviour. So they appear to justify the frequency or their beliefs around gambling by telling themselves that everyone else is actually worse than them. And that's quite worrying, because ultimately, if you are working down a track in thinking that a particular social norm is legit, that may lead to problematic behaviours. So it's very important for us to challenge these misperceptions, to enhance informed decision making, to shatter the illusion, and to help individuals understand normative behaviours. Another area of intervention that we're looking into are goal setting. So making clear and reachable goals. And within the literature, particularly in the healthcare domain, there is the use of SMART goals. So these are goals which are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're relevant to the user, but they're also time-based. And there are many ways in which we can utilize SMART goals with obtaining data from operators regarding players' usage. So we could look at time goals, trying to understand how long individuals spend gambling and whether or not we can offer them opportunities to set goals to change that. Also, money goals. So offering users the opportunity to set specific goals in regards to their spending. And the great thing about goal setting, in particular within the intervention, is that we offer the opportunity for feedback. So if something doesn't work, if we ask them to set a goal, but it doesn't work for them, perhaps that isn't the right specific goal. Perhaps there is a way to tailor such a goal to make it more effective. And this goes back to my previous point in that personalization and tailoring is super important. There's no clear-cut guideline on creating an intervention or improving safer gambling. So looking at these particular goal setting and social norms interventions, we're hoping to create this exciting project which we're currently undergoing. So we're hoping to recruit 200 participants in a longitudinal study which spans across 7 months. And during these 7 months, we're going to be obtaining, hopefully, data from gambling operators with the consent of the user. We are going to interact with the user regularly on a weekly update. I've been interacting with some participants this morning, and it's super exciting. We'll be offering questionnaires and ways in which we can actually measure behaviour change over this particular period of time. And we'll also be assessing the effectiveness and the feasibility of a particular intervention. So looking at these social norms, looking at goal setting within a period of 6 weeks within this 7-month period to see whether or not these interventions are feasible, if they are possible. And if so, how can we build upon that for future research? As part of clinical research, we're also including a control group so that we can compare whether or not the actual intervention messages do work. Or if you weren't to receive such messages, would you also particularly change your behaviour? And as you can see at the bottom, the most important for us is feedback. We want to know if it works. If not, how we can improve it. Very, very happy to say that we've got some great collaborators on board already. And across the board, we've got some exciting opportunities to share our research. So our research is currently being shared on websites by looking through on banners, which promotes the research, which is great. We also have some on-screen messaging. So when a user logs into their account, our study advert pops up. So it gives the opportunity for a user to read about our research, to decide whether or not it is right for them, and then also to sign up. We've also had the opportunity to use the email network, so being able to have our research study adverts emailed to users, which is a great opportunity to reach users that perhaps might not be aware of the actual research itself. And I'm very happy to say that we've got our research advert on both the responsible gambling pages on websites, as well as on the home page. So thank you for those of you who are currently collaborating. The data has been coming through in the last few weeks, and it is very exciting to see. However, we are still open to collaboration. We are still looking for operators who are willing to help us with this research. We have data sharing agreements already set in place, so we have templates which we can send out to different operators. And we would like to work with as many operators as possible. So to get a diverse range of different types of gambling, to see whether or not these interventions can work along different types of gamblers. So I have my email here. If you are interested to collaborate on this particular research, please send me an email and I can forward you some more information. As I said, AspireGam 2 also contains another package, and this relates to transparency. So how can transparency be used within the industry to promote safer gambling? In particular, what can we look at in regards to the design of materials or promotional information in order to enhance transparency, which is not only meaningful for the players, but also the operators? And by working and collaborating with the players and the operators, we're hopefully going to be able to identify ways in which we can promote safer gambling better. We've got some research undergoing at the moment. So we've got 2 research projects which have just finished. So the results are pending, so I apologise in advance that I don't have any exciting statistics to show you. And we've also got one project which is soon to start. So our first project looked at eye tracking, so using an objective measure to track users' experiences whilst actually online. And this is exciting technology. This gives us a great scope to understand a lot about the user's experience, but also about the design and the layout of websites. Do things work? Do they not? And what we try to understand within this research, so we had 30 individuals, and this contains 15 gamblers as well as 15 non-gamblers. So we want to get a good scope as to what messages are there, how individuals perceive these messages, and where these conscious and subconscious eye tracking movements actually go towards. So we wanted to understand how easy are safer gambling messages to find online. So we had participants just using the websites and try to find any information relating to safer gambling. Was that an easy task? Or did they spend a lot of time? We also wanted to understand how long users spend interacting with the safer gambling messages. So it's great if they actually see it, but if they don't actually read it or interact with the messaging, then something is wrong. And through looking at this eye tracking research, we're able to identify particular ways in which we can improve the usage as well as the website design. Also, how well can safer gambling messages compete with promotional material online? So are you easily distracted by the fancy images and the flashy lights? When in fact you may actually be asking yourself, I want to find out more information about healthy or safer gambling. So looking at this research, which I said unfortunately is pending, we're going to hopefully identify better practices in ways in which we can improve the user experience as well as gambling websites. So in the images here, you can see that we've got heat maps. So these areas are where the eyes gaze, or where they stay when they're looking. So the darker the colour, the longer the eyes were attracted to that particular area. We also have another project which last week actually came to a part conclusion, may I say. So we're looking at social media. So we're looking at identifying ways in which safer gambling messages are presented within Twitter, within tweets. And our idea is to look at the ways in which this message is sent, what type of content it is sent within, and ways in which we can potentially improve upon that. So we looked at whether or not gambling was promoted through tweets in comparison to safer gambling. We looked at ways in which the amount of safer gambling was promoted or not. And we also looked at ways in which emojis have been used within tweets, not only to potentially promote safer gambling, but also to promote gambling. Our research looked at over 44,000 tweets from different UK gambling operators and their support affiliates. And as I said, the results are pending, but we're hoping to see that there's going to be an interesting perspective as to how safer gambling is promoted. And then finally, both those two elements, so the eye tracking research and the social media analyses, are going to inform our co-design sessions. So this is where you can get involved, and this is where we want people to be involved. So we're interested in exploring how transparency through eye tracking and through social media in regards to the promotion of safer gambling messages can be improved. So what factors actually influence our acceptance of or our engagement with these messages? Can we find ways in which we can improve upon this? Do they all need to be changed? Do they work? And if so, do they work for particular individuals, or do they work across the board? So we are going to be running some workshops in which we're going to have participatory design and co-creation opportunities. So in these workshops, which we are hoping to have face-to-face in Bournemouth, if you've never been, we've got a lovely beach, not like Malta, a lot better. But we're also, if not going to be doing it on face-to-face, we'll be doing it online. So there are opportunities to still be involved. And we want to find ways in which we can inform transparency and safer gambling messages in their online games as well as promotional materials. So we'll be asking you to develop responsible gambling information, finding ways in which we can develop safer gambling messages. Do they work? What needs to be changed? And we are hoping to recruit individuals from a range of areas. So we want gambling operators to be involved. We want support services to also be involved, so charities. We're also very interested in the general public and what the public have to say in regards to safer gambling. And we're also want individuals who have previous lived experience. So working as a collective, we want to collaborate and find ways in which we can design responsible gambling for the better. And again, my email I will bring up. We are very, very happy and open to collaborators. So if you're an operator that wants to get involved with safer gambling, send us an email. If you are a charity or a service that also wants to, then please send us an email. And again, if you're public, we want to find ways in which we can improve safer gambling. For the gambling operators, we would also like the gambling operators who want to take part in safer gambling and want to take part within our research to give us the opportunity to access player data so that we can actually use this data to tailor intervention messages and also to promote safer gambling. But we're also interested in gaming companies or finding ways in which we can utilize our research to augment certain games and promotional materials to, again, enhance transparency and enable informed decision making. And as a final slide, Bournemouth University, what we can offer you if you want to get involved, we can offer you evidence-based advice on best practice in responsible gambling strategies. So through our research, we're going to hopefully create a roadmap to RG-driven transparency. So what works well? What templates we can offer the gambling operators and the industry to potentially use? We'll have experience and feedback from the user, which is the most important element. We can use that to offer new and exciting ways in which we can promote safety. And ultimately, we also have opportunities for collaboration and potential sharing of information and future research. So at Bournemouth University, we are very engaged with the gambling research, and we would like you to also be engaged with us. Any questions? And there's my email.
Well, Reece, Dr. Reece, thank you so much for that presentation. It was so interesting and so exciting. I do have some questions for you, and we've had some questions that have been sent in to us as well.
Awesome.
So let's have a seat and let's run through these questions. I did two things I wanted to point out. First of all, Bournemouth, yes, has a very nice beach, but Malta does trump on the weather and the beaches, just saying.
It does today.
And most days. And also, I think when you mentioned back there about the 3.5 hours on the phone that people in the UK, and I should imagine it's any different here in Malta, are spending on a phone 3.5 hours. I think everybody in the room put their phone down, because that's an incredible statistic. And as you said, once you know those statistics, once you know the reality of that, it does start to lead to an opportunity to change your behaviour. Thank you so much for the presentation. Let me look at some of the questions that came in, and this was one that really interested me. That eye tracking research, which was absolutely phenomenal. I was looking at that, and that is not necessarily new. Eye tracking with regards to marketing and advertising has been around for decades. But to be able to apply that in the context of safer gambling and the safer gambling messages is phenomenal. So what value does that eye tracking research offer in a practical way?
So thank you for your question. It offers a lot of value. So first and foremost, there is a history of eye tracking research, and that's typically used with bringing people into a lab. This research, however, was conducted during COVID, so we were able to use it with people in their own settings. So having an online eye tracking opportunity, so if you were at home on your laptop, where a lot of people would potentially gamble, gives them a more of an authentic experience to looking at these websites. But looking at the potential data, we can identify ways in which we can improve safer gambling. So where do the actual individuals look most? If they're looking always at the top left or the top right of a website page, then why can't we introduce safer gambling messages there? Are they having to scroll all the way to the bottom to press on responsible gambling, which is very, very small and potentially not that very clear? Then they're not going to find this. So using the eye tracking research, we're able to identify where the eyes naturally look, where the individuals are naturally drawn to. Are there these colours? Are there potentially flashing images which might overpower the use of safer gambling messages? So looking at this particular data, we're able to identify potential avenues for improvement.
And this is critical from a communications point of view for any company, not even just iGaming, but particularly for this safer gambling, where you're wanting to kind of fight the noise on the page to get the message through. So what are some of the preliminary findings of the social media analytics?
So based on what we've found so far, so unfortunately there seems to be a lack of messages sent through Twitter in relation to responsible gambling. There are some operators which have a higher usage of safer gambling messages through icons or particular information than others. But across the board, there is this lack. And it may be down to the use of social media and the regulations upon using gambling messaging within social media. But rather than looking at the negatives, it offers us the opportunity to see that social media is powerful and it has the opportunity to change and it has the opportunity to inform. So looking at where there are downfalls now, we can build upon this and we can look at incorporating more social media, more safer gambling messages in social media. So it gives us great scope for the future, although some of the preliminary findings don't look that great.
Well, as you said, they don't look that great, but it does open opportunities. And it's interesting, you picked on Twitter. And I just as an aside, I'm going to ask you the relevance of Twitter, because I know that every different country uses social media in different ways. For instance, here in Malta, Twitter may be less, but in the UK, Twitter is very, very prominent. And would you agree, is that the sort of basis for the research?
In a way, there's previous research which does use Twitter in different countries, and we can find out a lot of information from these tweets. Although they're very small in characters, we can get a good content analysis so we can understand the types of messages that are easily presented. And through different data algorithms, we're able to extract a lot of data. And some of this includes data which was previously deleted. So we're able to get a good idea as to what was sent out, how users engaged with it, so how many likes were on a particular post, were there retweets. But also within the actual social media analysis, we're looking not only at the tweets, but also replies. So looking at areas in which a customer may speak to a brand to either offer odds on a particular bet or speak to a brand regarding their need for help. So we're looking at coding those types of information and working out ways in which we can potentially improve. But yes, Twitter is a fantastic tool, and in the UK it is massive, and there are so many gambling operators and their support affiliates who are on Twitter. So it just made a natural sense to look at tweets.
Absolutely. Listen, we've got some more questions coming in from online, and we'll be looking at other areas in just a second. But how will the co-design sessions support the user and the industry?
That's a very good question. So we're hoping with these upcoming co-design sessions to incorporate the opportunity for voices to be heard. And more often than not, the player's voice isn't heard, or it may not be heard by the industry. So we want to try to find ways in which we can collaborate, so we can group together the industry, the general public, previous individuals with previous lived experience, as well as charity operators. They each have their unique view on how safer gambling can be developed and how it should actually operate. So trying to bring them together to work together is going to be super important. Trying to find something which operates and works for everybody, rather than one particular domain.
I love this whole research that you put together. It's absolutely brilliant. I want to just ask you, where could this research develop? Where could this take us? What's the vision?
Well, the vision is ultimately that through work package 1, so looking at this longitudinal study, but also through work package 2, the transparency element, so the eye tracking, the social media and the co-design, we're going to be able to find and identify a good practice guideline, which we're able to offer the industry so that they can use templates. So we've got real data which we've analysed. Can that be used to inform change within the industry where it may be needed? From there, potentially Irrigam free. If anybody would like to collaborate, that would be great. And we can expand upon the research, look more longitudinally, look at more data that we can obtain or higher numbers. So we love data. Data is gold. And as researchers, we are thoroughly interested and excited about future collaborations, as well as future opportunities to build upon this project further.
We talked about collaboration there, and I was thrilled to see that we have 3 IDEN members involved in this research, and that's fantastic. But as you said, data is gold, so you really want to get more and more people involved in these projects to be able to take it even further. So I'm encouraging, just as you had, everyone to get on board and to bring that information together. Now, of course, if anybody's listening to this on playback and they have questions, they can send those questions to our wonderful Elizabeth over there at Aspire and send them to here, and they can pass those questions on, and you, of course, will get him back in touch. And I'm pretty sure you'd be happy to answer any questions at all.
Very, very happy. The more input, the more feedback that we can obtain from all different stakeholders, the better.
And there's no judgment there. I mean, I just want to say that anybody who wants to participate, no judgment, no preconceptions, as you said right at the very beginning about our behaviour. It's just all about safer gambling.
Yes, that's the ultimate goal, is to improve safer gambling.
Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to close this fantastic... Elizabeth had nothing to say.
Thank you. No, it has been fantastic. Nothing to add here. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. What an absolutely exciting way to start day 2 of Safer Gambling Week. Do get in touch with Aspire, get in touch with Dr. Reece here. And of course, if this has touched you in any single way at all, there is always the support line 1117 for here in Malta.